There's still water there. There's a modern day wall because they're doing agriculture in there. And
Yeah,
that thing that they found, see, I'm sorry, the picture that I have here,
yeah,
that's
right
from
there.
their, that's from
Look how the
their,
trees are growing in the middle. That's a perfect place to plant a huge amount of trees all through that area. But why aren't they doing that? Because look, you would plant the trees directly in the center. If that wall is, as you say, imagine the amount of trees you could plant in there. Oh, but wait, you would start to show signs that there was previous waterworks million years ago or 100,000 years ago. We're not allowed to show that in history. So don't plant any trees there to stop erosion because you're going to displace the historical timeline. And with us today, David Stig Hansen, going to be speaking at the Cosmic Summit. Been to Mauritania 3 times prior out looking for artifacts at the Richat structure that can identify a certain time period in prehistory. Was on his 4th trip and was detained in Mauritania. They wouldn't even let him go out to the zone. Maybe it was too much social media before telling where you were going to go. And then the entire trip was halted at the airport, not even to get out there and be denied further access, but just they wouldn't even let you out into the country to explore anything because they knew you were there to show something or discredit something. And it just, well, so that is 4 times, but one's detained the entire time. So what is it with archaeology and ancient history they don't really want us to know? Going to be speaking at the Cosmic Summit on later in June. It's on the solstice in June this year, and it's in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's
this month. This month.
Stiggy looks excited. He's like, this month. You are stoked, man. You should be stoked.
I'm happy. No, it's going to be awesome.
A great honor to be around those people that are really thought leaders in how our past is told to us one way. We're fed all these stories of linear time in school all the way through university. And when you get out and you actually take years off to go travel or you go to places, wait a minute, well, everything I learned up to this point doesn't match where I'm actually standing on the ground in this ruins or things I'm seeing, or the history is, well, written by the victors. So a lot of times you start to find history that, well, contradictory to what was written by the victors, right? There's all types of, why don't they, I said there's obfuscation. There are all types of that. And there's trying to stifle research and new finds to try to make it squeeze back into that, trend that they've given to us for 100 years. Why is that? What kind of control is from that of controlling history? I guess I should start it there. But David Stig Hansen, welcome. Thanks for coming on the show. And yeah, maybe that, why would they want to hide history like that? I guess is your bet. And then you can just take it any way you want. I just wondered why you think they would hide history first as a, go at it. You are standing on the stage at the Cosmic Summit, address the audience of millions watching online.
I'm on 2 panels. On Sunday. That's the 22nd. 20th Friday is the 20th. The 21st is Saturday. On the 22nd, it's the Explorers Club. And then on the 23rd, I'm on a panel called Atlantis Debate. So you can give me all your questions about those 2 topics.
Wait, it seems like you're obfuscating from the question again. I'm going to hold you to. And just why do you think they're hiding history? You seem like you dodged the question right then. You went into something else completely right away. So why do you think they're trying to hide history? I mean, hiding history, what benefit for these persons that control central banking and, other power structures on the planet from the top down?
Can I just answer that question after Cosmic Summit? I'm going into public. I'm kind of worried about that.
Why would they hide history? Okay, let's bring it back down.
Come on. Look, first of all, I really love, I hate to do it.
See, but something scary.
My niche is pre-Atlantis and the Richat structure. And if you want to talk about who is covering up the fact that everybody thought the Atlas Mountains was Atlantis, in the 1500s, there are maps that show the Nile coming from the Atlas Mountains. Even Herodotus' map shows. The thing is that in this map in Latin, it says the Nile flowing from Atlantis.
Again, you go to these rare map sites that you can peruse through on the auctions that, they're usually private collectors buy this kind of stuff or some sort of museums, collections. So they're all for sale, thousands of them in these rare maps that you can go to these websites, or like they photographed them before auction on those sites of these rare maps. So there's really millions of photos out on the internet of this stuff. These maps make no sense for the time that they're supposed to be in.
All right, let me show you a bunch of new images.
How do you feed your families when the shelves are empty, the stores are shut, and there's no food available? What is the fastest, easiest, and most productive foods to grow? What is the quickest way to get somebody who has no skills at all up and running and producing very quickly? If you understand that we're at a point in history where it is no longer optional to be growing your own food. If you're like really freaked out and concerned because you've never grown food before and you don't have any skills, you don't know how to do that, but you know how important it is, then I want to let you know, however you stumbled here, you're in the right place. My name is Marjorie Wildcraft. I'm the founder of the Grow Network, and I have been the female leader in the survival and preparedness space for the last 20 years.
How to grow lots of food, even if you have no experience, are older and out of shape. This is for people who want the fastest and easiest ways to produce healthy and delicious meat, eggs, and vegetables. Because you know that growing your own food is like printing your own money. During this webinar, you will get status of global food shortages, how long the crisis will last, how much space you need to grow food, easiest, highest calorie foods you can produce, a complete plan for producing all the food you need, how to get started today, regardless of season. Marjorie will show you the fastest, easiest, and simplest ways to produce calories and nutrition, especially in a crisis and/or grid-down situation. The assumption is that you have no experience and you need to start producing food immediately. The most popular part of the webinar is the Q&A session at the end. So please come prepared with your questions.
The iron ore rail station, this is nearby.
Yeah, iron ore rails out there.
This big old chunk of dark dirt has the longest train in the world delivering iron. And this thing's called the Kedjidjil. I don't know if I pronounced that right. This big thing.
There's the train tracks built into one of those lines again. They used it this time there to build a train track on top of it because they knew the roadbed was so solid on it they could put train tracks on it.
The ancient Taman Rasset Paleo River came up and over this, and this other city of Frederick, that's also part of it. Look at this thing here. I believe that they were moving. I believe they were moving content, and you've got these things here that I call snail trails, and they're really old, but I believe it's some type of overburden dumping, or maybe tailings, or maybe
in lines like that.
Snail trails. I want to show a couple here.
It would just be faster to dump it in one pile than it would to like spread it out all over there.
Well, here's the thing. I believe they made these for water control. This is way up far away. This is in the Taman Rasset Mountain. These ridges were going across.
Right. I would have grabbed water. That one thing you just showed me, that would have slowed down and meant like a lot.
These are for water control.
That water would have lasted longer soaking in the mountainside there.
So this is a damming activity, right? The moving mountain is part of the snail trail thing. Now, in this case, we have not just a snail trail that's flat. These other ones are flat, degraded, hard to see when you're on the ground. There's a bunch of them out here. But this one, not only is it
water catchment, it would slow down everything and channel. Either if it was coming from the north to the south, it would definitely cause a break there, and everything would pour through more slowly, and the water would get really much more saturated there if you slow down the water.
How does it start here or stop here and start back up again?
Because that's a fault line earthquake. That was a fault thrust. That's the second one. Can you screen capture that? You just found another fault thrust right there.
Does a fault line develop a little zit at the end?
Fractured and it moved. They captured it live on film where that exact action happened, where it was lined up and then whoosh, it wasn't lined up anymore. You found two of those so far. That's crazy, man.
By the way, this one has all these tumuli. That's modern. And when I say modern day, it could be 1,000 years old. This comes from Anthony Tunstall. He runs Zero Control. Everybody should go check out his channel at Zero Control YouTube. He introduced me to these things, and I think they're all okay. I think they're also a form of tumuli or burial mounds of some sort. They always have a little bump right there. Anthony called them the eyes, and they're everywhere in the Sahara Desert, and that's one of them. And so that was put there by a more modern day, probably 2,000, maybe 10,000 years old.
Can you zoom in on that a little bit? Can we look at the eye? Can you zoom in on that, what you're talking, the bump? When you come back to it, tell everybody where you were going to visit out on the Richat structure and what you were going to look at. And that's, I personally, I'm still going to hold to this. Now, anybody out there can agree or disagree. They were stopping you from going out there because what was that is there, along with other things that would have been along an ancient coastline in that exact same area that just don't make sense or don't fit the timelines that we've been fed or told as human history the way that we've been told it. It just You have to rewrite history completely.
That's where I was going. This is where I was going.
Yeah.
That is 6 miles long and 3 miles wide. Those ancient cuts were done a long time ago. They're not on the highest plateau. They're at a later escarpment that revealed what they were chasing.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. And, trying to put the social media out to get more funding to go further out there and get better guides and stay out longer with another Jeep or whatnot. It was already out there that people knew you were coming there to go look at this obscure way place north of the Richat structure on the ancient sea coastline. Stop anybody going up there.
Exactly.
Words out.
Look, I want to rush through this material just in case I don't get a chance to talk about it. We get distracted. Something happens. There was another.
You distracted? No way.
Me? Look, if you attach the line between Easter Island and the Great Pyramid right in the center of it, now they claim it goes all the way around the world. It's an ancient equator. But here, I'm not going to say that line goes right through. But as you can see, what is the second thing that I just showed you? One of my viewers pointed this out to me. I can give you more pictures of it. It also has a transport road gap going right through the frigging center of it, and a ridge going over that. Now, I'm stopping here, but this isn't the best picture I have. But it's parallel to this ancient equator that goes around the world. There was more than just one set of circles in the Sahara Desert, okay? And the thing here is, could that be both of them on the Piri Reis map? And could that be a garden gnome in the middle of the Richat structure right there? That's a Piri Reis map. I'll show you other images of that later, but I want the audience to have it as soon as possible, so let's wait an hour and a half before I show it. Also, there is a 50-mile long canal going through what I call the Lower Adrar Mountains, pointing right at the mouth, the breached cistern. There it is there. Now, that's why I'm getting to the Russian guys. The Russian team went there. This is the 50-mile long canal. It's cutting through the bedrock. They found this thing, okay? They found this thing, and now they went back. I got to show you some pictures here. These guys found it.
They found it like an artifact.
Yeah, right. Now, look, I do believe I have to introduce it this way.
It's just a piece of rock, isn't it?
I believe that the Sebket El Guelb is an impact crater. Now, the canal that they went to is over here. And because of this finding, because of these images, I believe that this is an impact crater that destroyed Atlantis. This is the cataclysm. What happened to these mountains?
Well, they got vaporized. Literally, they got pulverized into like granite powder.
Right. So now I'm going to show you. They went back. I couldn't go with them. They went back. I'm going to show you what they found in that impact crater. And this is them. This is what they found. Now, I know you're going to say microspheres. Well, they're not that small. They found this thing.
Small. They're usually using them like a electron microscope at 500 times resolution to look at those spherules.
Look,
500 times bigger than the normal ones. If you want to put it into perspective,
okay,
500 times the electron scanning microscope is what you're looking at the regular ones with. A lot of the data comes out in the photos.
They've already sampled this data. This came from my impact crater. These guys, I was.
So what's the telltale chemical or atom that they're looking for there that's going to give them the wow, this was an impact?
I say it's the Mn, which is manganese. Or wait, is it the Mg? Manganese, which means that it's a product they use to create steel from iron. And we've got the iron. Where's the iron? Right there, the Fe. The Fe is the iron. Look, I don't have a degree in this, so I'm just trying to say I don't know.
Is that all the bigger it is right there? I mean, how big is this thing you're talking about? Because the zoomed in image looked like it was, bigger than that for sure.
I don't know the answer to that. These pictures just came out. I can do an interview with those guys.
Another person who speaks their language. Which language do you need an interpreter for?
Well, there's two guys, Dimitri and Dan. And Dimitri, he's the guy. He's the top guy, but his English is not that good. And
what's his mother tongue?
Russian.
Okay.
And then Dan, he can speak better English.
And his mother tongue?
his mother tongue is Russian as well. These guys,
Okay, then we need to find somebody that's out there that can speak both English and Russian to be able to get a phone call together to ask these guys about really what they found, like the size of this thing. Did it look like it was melted and then remelted, or how they know? I mean, there's a huge amount of questions to ask. What
that shows you the size, right? You're seeing the size right there with this guy's in its hand.
Right, was that the very first one? Because that one had like more oranges and blues. And
what you're seeing here, two 90-degree angles. We're not seeing the other corner. We're seeing this part, and then it's turning 90 degrees, and it's coated there. So this square, or this was coated. Let's get to the other picture. That
how big is this piece? How big is that we're looking at there?
That right there is the thing that's in the 50-mile canal that they took a chunk out of. This is that thing that I just showed. I don't know how big that is, but if we looked at the thing that was in his hand and we see these little spheroids in his hand, those look like they're about an 1/8 inch wide, maybe.
Wait a second. So that's the ash that came off of that impact where you said, I said the mountains would get vaporized.
Right.
That's how thick the dust layer was from that vaporization. Wow, you just identified that right there. Shit.
Now that line, look, that line.
That's how thick the dust layer would have been if that truly was an impact being that close. Like you can do it with volcanoes too. Like how much volcanic ash, if you're closer to the eruption point, the same exact thing. And then you got a different layer. See, I
don't know what this phallic. Look at this thing. This thing was attached and it broke off. This phallic shaped image, but
that was deposited. That's
underneath it. You can see this line is goes straight down. So when you back out, that is literally a rectangle right there, or part of a rectangle. Okay, and I just showed you another image. It's so important. I'm going to show you. I'm going to put them together.
I'm super interested in what looks like blacktop or asphalt on the top of that. That is the ash layer from the impact right there.
You say that, but what if it was orichalcum that's been corroded or degraded? What if that is the tin that Plato wrote about? They coated all their walls with metal. Tin. Okay, there's two stories. There's silver, gold, and orichalcum. Then there's tin, and I think what happened was during the translations, I read Critias almost every day. Okay, or I'm looking at Critias, what Plato wrote every day. I'm breaking it down every day, trying to figure out the story. And we can talk more about that. There's so many things to talk about. What Plato said. Let me.
There's your impact crater. So for me, my analysis or hypothesis would be impact crater there. You said that was not very far from what you consider the
center of the Richat. Let's open the video one more time.
But it had to have been way heavier of a different thing, that not just dust, or else it'd blow away, right? So it definitely had some density to it. Yeah, look at that. Looks like it perfectly melted right on top.
Okay, now this video glitches right when I want to pause it, but that right there, that is the center of the Richat structure. Okay, let me finish the video. And so he doesn't show it like my video shows it. I got a video of when I went to that same place. Right there, it kind of shows it. And my Twitter, I showed this thing in my Twitter. Let's check the numbers, shall we? Because I'm so excited. I actually got 50,000 views on Twitter.
Which that piece right there, that's the piece of rock I was talking about from the beginning.
It's later on in the presentation. Okay, I put this up here so we can talk about that thing. Now, here's what Randall Carlson said when? January 20, 2020. Okay, the date's right there in the bottom. This is a screenshot when he said there were chert outcrops in this structure that were being quarried by somebody, hundreds and thousands of years ago, he said. Okay? Now, he didn't back it up, but he said later 1.2 million years ago. So even Randall Carlson, even though he doesn't think this is Atlantis. Now, let's look at this picture. The kimberlite plug. If you want to talk about an entry to underneath, I think that's the kimberlite plug. That was the drainage that drained this whole thing. Gabronic ring dikes, okay? One is here. There's another one here. It's got the breached mountain. So the mountains are missing. And then you've got the center island there. I'll talk about that later. But right now, let's look at what mainstream narrative says. Mars system and displacement of ring dike by fault. So the Gabronic ring dike got displaced by a volcano. The mountains would still be there, but displaced. The mountains would still be there, but displaced. Where are the mountains? They're just gone. The whole thing's gone. So
vaporized, literally vaporized.
That's a faceted stone. Do hunter-gatherers need to make that? I don't think so. I didn't know what outcrop structures were being quarried, and I assumed that it was this thing. So I went there on Valentine's Day. I don't want to get too deep
So
into
romantic.
it, but
Can I
I
share your
think
water bottle in the desert with scorpions, dude?
when I first went there, a guy named Justice, he's passed away. He used to run the hotel in Atar. I stayed there. He gave me this picture and called it the Roman Road, and I was like, "Where's this place? I want to go there." Well, it turned out it's part of this structure, where I think that this whole thing was a quarry field. Okay, and there were different projects going on. Okay, we're gonna get back to that question you asked about the 50-mile thing, but we got to do it
Well,
one
my
step at a
original
time.
question was, why do you think people want to hide history, the true length of our history, and the
Because
tumultuousness of it on
people
cycles?
people would stop paying their credit cards. People would stop working. People would the US dollar would fail. Centralized currency would fail. Look, the bottom line is people call that jointing. Your buddy is it Diamond over? No. See, I get them all confused.
Diamond at the Oppenheimer Ranch Project. Shout out, dude. Long time no
Right,
chat.
it's
We
not
gotta
him. I'm talking
catch
about
up on Paul Manova.
sun weather
The Sun
champ,
Weatherman, Ben
sun
Davison,
weatherman, Ben
Suspicious
Davidson.
Observer.
He always swoops into my videos and he says something like, "That's jointing." And when
Great, let him talk. See, that's what it's all about. We should be allowed to do this, but in
well,
climate
that's the
debate, we're
thing.
not allowed to do it.
I
Why
don't
not?
believe it's jointing for a second.
Well,
Look,
you're saying this one thing, and he says joint. Awesome, man. I want to look at both sides of the story. Oh,
do you think
this
that
rainfall patterns changing because
sedimentary
of
rock?
magnetic field on the sun. You can't talk about that.
Let me ask you this: can sedimentary rock have a predisposition of parallel grooves? Not just two sets of parallel lines, but three. Look at this one. This is good. Hey, maybe this is modern day, but it goes over a mile. These 2, 3 mounds here, these plateaus, that's about a mile or so, maybe a little bit. There's more, but these lines here, look, the north south. Then there's the east west. But wait, there's one more set of parallel lines right there. This set right there that's going kind of at this angle. Are you saying that sedimentary rock that's millions of years old is predispositioned to erode from water and wind like this? Look at this machine.
Electrical fracturing. If you were having that same plasma event that was melting far in the southern African area in South Africa, then the electrical discharge up where you're at would have been man. You talk about voltage going through the planet's crust. Ooh.
Look at this serpentine.
That could have cracked rock. If it can melt veins and reassemble them again across electromagnetic bonding, then hell, you could crack rock with that.
Somebody was doing something. This wasn't a natural thing to me. Look at that serpentine it's not a river. It's a ridge of rock that's been left over instead of being quarried away. This is Tassil Najer. It's not natural joint. It's a mining.
It didn't look like a road. It looked like it was an S bending through the desert. Can you go back 2 slides?
By the way, you remember this one, right? I will. You remember this one? We diagnosed this live on yours. On your channel.
Yeah, that was that city that looked like it ran through. That was in southern. Where was that? Southern.
So what? Why would they?
Or something, right?
Why would nature make a serpentine? So if it was,
well, I think it was the slide after that because you showed how it'd been quarried there. Kind of interesting. So yeah,
I think what it was a later project came through, and they did it to this thing. They're like, well, what's this? It's a big serpentine ridge left over by somebody. Well, that's the material we want. Well, the earlier mining, they left that flat surface, but they left the serpentine thing. And then later people came in and said, yeah, I need this. I should move that big rock because this one that Randall Carl, I'm going to move this right here. This one here, what I'll do is I'll just duplicate it because I like to keep the point in the same spot. It's the same type of stone, is in my opinion. So what type of machine did it?
Like our types of machine with the limitations that we have currently without using electrogravitics and different types of.
Did a modern day person create this stone just like the ones that were used to build the pyramids? Or was that natural? The thing's been faceted on the top. That's a research paper that Randall Carlson brought to my attention. So, yeah, there were different
levels. Or was it poured substrate?
I believe it was poured slurry. And maybe later, I'll show you a couple where they poured on top of the mining, they poured mounds on top of this. This is that same area. So I don't believe that this was made naturally.
Right. Go back one slide if you could, please. Just one back.
This one?
Yeah, you can identify what would be the city walls there. It looks very rectangular. And when I was
Right. Let's
on
go
a show
there.
with David here earlier, how long ago was that? We saw this one. I was like, no way. It looks like a city right there.
Let's go there.
Again, the walls around that would look like anything that you would see in Europe as a city wall for protection on the inner walls. Those rectangles, perfect rectangles, would be on the inner walls. Outer ones, they go the direction of the contour of the earth.
Look, when even on a megalithic level, I wonder about this line right here. There's a line right here, and there's other long lines, but this line right here, it starts way up here and comes straight down and goes through a nearby area. I think that was a transport road moving a lot of material, a lot of content. This is what we were just looking at, and when you zoom in slowly, I'm looking at this little thing. What we were talking about. Look, we can visit. No photo. Sorry, no photo. But we can go there and take a look at that thing that you wanted me to go back to. Where is it? Is it over here? There it is, right there. And there's this name, so everybody can go there.
You can see a little more defined edges right there on it. I mean,
so here it is.
And 30,000 years of erosion on it, or something of that nature.
Oh, sure, it's degraded. It's 1 million years old, if not older, and I believe it's.
Okay, well, add 970,000 to that. Okay, we'll bring it at 1 million.
Look, 13,000 years ago was the end of Atlantis.
30, like Sanshi, like 30,000.
No, when was the beginning of Atlantis? I don't have the answer to that question. Look at that rectangle. There's the thing. I moved it. Look at the angle down there on the compass. And then you've got what I believe that mound right there was probably pay dirt that they stacked there, and then a later person came through there. That's Algeria, Tassil Najer.
That was a pay dirt mound. Then perhaps they're mining a different mineral, because that's not full of gold, or else we would have scoured it already. If that was the pay dirt that had the ore in it, dude, we would have used that like thousands of years ago. If you're like, oh, dude, this stuff's full of gold, let's just go like.
You've welded before, right? You've welded. No, I'm just joking.
I'm not a welder. I'm not.
I do all that stuff. I was in a welding class. I was in an air conditioning class. I'm doing electricity right now.
You want this guy welding together the frame of your car?
Go to Planetary Valley. Look, I'm going to have to show you on the big map. This is Tassil Najer. I got to put, wait. Yeah, there we got, let me get back north-south, and let me show you. Right at the border of Libya and Algeria. If you go over here where Libya and Algeria come together, you get to these things up here. And we're going to see something called Planetary Valley. But you get to this thing right here. That's where I showed you on my slideshow. You think someone carved that? Is machined. The canals around, okay, right here where my mouse is, that is the ancient Tamanrasset Paleo River. That canal's going from the Richat structure right here, going straight up to that's connecting the two. The 50-mile long canal, it's right there. Okay, those other two, I walked down there. There it is. It's going right through there. Those guys went there. They got
there it is. That's the canal. Can you go back one slide, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, money right there.
That's the item
yeah, that's it.
That's the money shot, you think, huh? Gosh, my hands are shaking because I'm so excited right now. I gotta brace my.
I didn't mean it like that.
There's
that dirty bird.
There's that thing they found.
Can you go back to? I wanted to look in the canal. Can I look?
Yeah, we go back to it.
There it is.
I have a whole video.
Can you zoom in? I want to see way down at the edge by those branches way down there. Can you zoom in on that?
50 miles long. They are right there. That's where they are, right there. Let me just go down a little farther.
We'll zoom in on that later.
You want to see the whole thing? We're going to go. Now you can barely see it cutting through this.
It's buried under the sand.
You can see it right there.
That man must have subsided there for that to go down under the sand.
You can see it right there. Wait, there's a big old chunk up here that we got to see. Look at that. Look at that. It's 50 miles long. People are ignoring this, and they're continuing to argue about SAR scans. They're continuing to argue about the pyramids. Let's get to these new things we found. There's still water there. There's a modern day wall because they're doing agriculture in there. And that thing that they found, see, I'm sorry, the picture that I have here, that's from there. That's from
Look how the
their.
trees are growing in the middle. That's a perfect place to plant a huge amount of trees all through that area. But why aren't they doing that? Because look, you would plant the trees directly in the center. If that wall is, as you say, imagine the amount of trees you could plant in there. Oh, but wait, you would start to show signs that there was previous waterworks million years ago or 100,000 years ago. We're not allowed to show that in history. So don't plant any trees there to stop erosion because you're going to displace the historical timeline.
Do you see how it kind of teardrops? It bulges out. It turns into this thing. Okay, I don't have the sample chart. They got that cut. Something I don't want to get too deep into it, but they sampled this same. It has manganese. It has iron. It's very high iron rich. Okay, this segment it tails off. It's like a tadpole. There's the head. There's the tail. There's another tail here. There's two of these shapes. Those are the two canals that I walked down. Now let's talk about this. Those two, not so parallel, but definitely canals were.
You walk down those canals.
I walked down it right here, and it is 20 feet deep. Okay, that one that
What's
they
the
went
grade
through,
on it though? Was it pretty much flat?
very, very slow going from this down to this river here. And this one right here, it continues down with a natural river. So there's natural rivers incorporated into this design.
Yeah, natural river should be much bigger if it was for the long time they say about erosion. If that was catching water too, I mean, that should be much more worn out going down to the, that catchment at the bottom there.
Those pictures that they showed, that picture, that is the men. Those are people right there where my mouse is. Those are people. So this canal is about 50 feet deep. Those trees are about 20 foot high. Those are natural growing, I think. They weren't planted.
And right, that's what I'm saying. It's going right down to the water that's left over in those canals down. You could put millions of trees in the middle of those, what you call canals.
There are already 100,000 trees in this canal that I walked in. But wait, there's more. The highest point, we have this, now I'm losing myself, topographic map of the area. And as you can see, I call that shape Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Look at that nose, 2 mounds right here, not as tall as the highest point. Why? There's also cut marks on both sides of the highest point right there. And one of them goes right through the Twin Peaks. And this 2 Twin Peaks, there's one of them has a name, the other one doesn't. They're not as tall. These mounds are not as tall as the highest point. I believe they were pay dirt also. Also, on top of here, you're seeing the water wall that sits on top of this other plateau. There were canals. The canal clusters up here.
Well, you just showed me again. Can you go back to that picture? You just showed the offset right there. See how they were running straight and then suddenly they're not straight anymore. One drops out. That is a
talking about that
earthquake event on the crust you just
You were talking about that, and I don't disagree.
The third instance you just showed me, right?
That's a later event. We talked about that earlier, and yes, here are the snail trails.
The third time you're showing me it. It's kind of, if you didn't see that, that's how things get moved in history.
Well, what about this intersection? See, that's why I do believe these are canals. And yeah, you see,
there's another thrust fault right there. Again, you see it. No, go down. You see it moved.
Okay, this exposed breccia outcrop. Yeah. That's where you see you still see it tweaked right there. Something happened. Western Sahara, aka Rio de Oro, River of Gold. That's what the Spanish called this. I drove to here. Okay, do you see these bisected peaks? In my last thing, I told you this line cuts through down this highest point and cuts down through there. I drove there, and I checked out that cut. Was that an ancient transport road?
That's the cut, right? That's the cut we're seeing on the map.
That's the cut. I got the shot. And this other one, and then there's that giant water wall. The other one also has a cut. Both of these mounds have the cut. And that's the ancient water wall.
That looks like a giant piece of what you showed me that was on top of the little rock that was a couple inches thick. That looks like the same thing, but like a dozen feet thick.
That's right here.
That could have been just a globule of melted stuff after the ejection.
But the Atlas Mountains is where they thought the Nile came from. Okay? Herodotus shows it too on his map. He didn't make the map. His scholars did. Atlas equals Atlantis. ATL. Look at the ancient Taman Risset River. We've got this ancient map that showed what people believed, the myths that people believed, including Antarctica was something down there. But as far as the belief about the Nile River, they thought it came from Atlantis.
Did you see where it says Alter Orbis on the bottom of that map?
No, what it says is a delineated antique map of the world. It's from I finally got the date. 1648 is what I believe at this time. There was a mythical continent called Antique. It's right there where my arrow is. And this map presents a pre-modern understanding of the world, reflecting mythological beliefs relevant to the 16th century, the 1500s. You can also see the isthmus of land that's still connected Spain, Iberian Peninsula.
It is, isn't it? That would have been, oh, no way.
Yeah, it says so right there. The isthmus that separates the two seas. And Herodotus points at Atlas Mountains too. Atlas was Atlantis. Whether you believe that the king of Mauritania was the Atlas from the story of Atlantis.
Where can people find your work?
They find my work at my new website, davidstighansen.com. I am focused on African Atlantis right now. I'm going to be at Cosmic Summit, and I'm going to be debating Atlantis, African Atlantis. A lot of the stuff I showed today was given to me by my audience, and I try to give credit for everything. So, I mean, after 8 years, I kind of start to forget. I think I've forgotten more than I've actually shown you today. So,
well, that means there's still some stuff wrapped up in David Stig Hansen's brain. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Thank you so much.